we may be a few minutes behind, but I had to switch some settings and, you know, we're each here when we're meant to be here. How's it going, everyone? Happy New Year to our Policy Angles show. We are here and I want to make sure everything's looking good before we jump into it. And stay tuned. Before we get into our agenda for today. So we'll go bum 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 bum. And the best way to do this is if I turn that off. And let's go. Brick, yeah. That's pretty good. The best way to do this audio check. I turn that off. Sick. And there we go. Let's make sure this is being charged. And we can now jump into it. The stream's current bit rate is lower than recommended. We can up that. Recommended bit rate for YouTube. Hold on as I fix this. Because Twitch has a much smaller bit rate. And 8 megabytes per second. Recommended bit rate for YouTube stream. That doesn't help me. It says megabytes per second, and so this setting, I think I can change this while I'm streaming. Output. So it's kilobytes per second right now, which is, I think we can go up to 12,000. Let's try this. And I think our internet is able to handle this. Up just a little. Okay. I told you to repeat that last song. We'll go to the next one. Enable repeat. Okay. And one last thing I need to get ready is my overlay, which I guess I don't need an overlay to do this, but we'll do it anyways. So how is it going? Our plans, and I already have an overlay. We have a few topics we want to talk about today. We're going from intros and background on the show. We're gonna go from that into reflections on this show last year. We're gonna go from that to talking about the Colorado financial budget and why we are in over $1 billion budget deficit at the state level. And then gonna do a little bit of a run through of how someone testifies on legislation and where to look and get involved there. And then if we have extra time, we will take a look at some bills and talk about them. Sound good? Now I don't want a new overlay. I would like to download this one and just change the help break down barriers to politics and live show to help break down. That is fine. We can leave that up. And then we just download it without a background. Transparent background, page 1. Download. That's not a bad overlay either, though. Okay. And now if I go over here, we go boop. We browse. We go to the downloads. And now I move it up here. And we go like that. And that's fine. Cool. Okay. We shall move my agenda over here. And now I just need my album that has some other images I need for later. I believe it's this folder, 2025. Huge, cool. And if I go like that, I should be able to see everything right there. Restream recording, and there's my chat. Perfect. Okay. So let's just jump right into it. Hello all. Welcome to the Policy Angles show. This is a show centered around how we can make positive impact and change people's lives through our government system and better understanding of how it works. We have a focus on Colorado legislature, but a lot of these lessons can be applied to a number of different areas of government. County level, your state level, and actually the federal level theoretically is the same, but I think it actually plays out quite a bit different with each person having a little bit less influence. But that said, if you're still able to get a lot of people together, there's a lot of good work and impact that you can do. This was inspired last year, just wanting to try to have a better impact on our policy landscape and push myself to cover it more, force myself to be more comfortable streaming and talking and exploring things live. And it also gave people kind of an authentic behind the scenes look into what goes into things. Community driven group overall has the goal of using entertaining and educating content and events to work on the similar goal of bringing people together around how we can make our structural systems work better for all of us. And this show helps us, direct that energy during this legislative session. We're going to start off chatting about how last year's show went and some changes we're making this year that will hopefully make this easier on me to manage, but also then give more time into the production. So what are the main maybe reflections and learnings from last year? So last year, besides I think one Friday, I did the Policy English show Friday evenings throughout the session. And it was weekly, but it was also during a time where I also had a part-time job and other aspects of life and volunteering. And so while we did have that Friday show and we had a number of fun segments and tutorial videos that came out of it, that weekly pace was kind of hard to keep up with. I had gone into it wanting to involve people and to the discussion. I wanted to involve politicians into covering what they're up to and other ways that we could have a positive impact. And then my goal was to then have those live streams, step away from those live streams and recordings. Some of those segments and sections split up into smaller videos. And if you look at some of the videos from last year, you can see I did that with I was a little bit more active at the beginning, January, February range. And as the weekly shows went on, I found myself behind the curve with editing. Video editing is a pretty time-intensive process, and even when you get a planned segment where you're talking about something for 30 minutes, you try to get down to maybe like 15, 20 minutes, figure out where the areas where you can cut time and make sure you're bringing energy and the value to people. But then you additionally have to try to turn that clip into smaller nuggets that will catch people's attention. This is more of like a new channel, new flow type thing, because I don't have like a huge following. And so when it came to making the sections and turning the sections into shorts, it just became a lot. And this year, to help change things up, we're doing it monthly. So we're gonna do monthly Policy Angle shows. I might have a special edition in here somewhere, but we're gonna do monthly so that I can give time to edit, make the shorts, and really focus in on that extra bit of bringing in community. So front side production and reaching out to both politicians and change makers to add input, and then on the tail end of it, editing it so that it can reach more people and that the channel can grow to eventually have that wider impact that we want to have. So that was one of the big learnings. And I kind of tied in, I guess, on my notes the 2 points I wanted to speak to already, but that push for direct engagement, promotions, and working to include voices of others. Now that this is monthly, we can put the time to making that happen. This last month has been pretty busy, and so I didn't quite get to a lot of the promotion side like I wanted to. I think I shared if only 2-3 spaces, but sometimes when you have other work you need to get done, some of the extra additional stuff kind of falls to the side. But heading into February, our goal is to do better and see where it goes. We have a few awesome segments planned for today, talking about where we are in Colorado's budget and how that's going to influence the legislature this year, as well as doing a little bit of a tutorial on testifying for legislation, which we will now get into. Okay, so let me pull up some of these slides and then get them shared screen for you. I will say that having all those streams last year, it helped me learn how much effort goes into both the producing of stream and then getting it to people. And you kind of saw that as the year went on last year, where I kind of changed my flow up. I decreased the time. I let my energy match the shows where it was at. And just overall, I think did become better at streaming, both the technical side of making sure my camera is hooked up to my microphone, it's hooked up to my setup, that I'm doing double checks, did those discount double checks, and hopefully, yeah, some of my comfort just being alive in general, I guess, and comfort talking politics. And we'll hope that this second year of the show, we'll be able to grow off that effort last year. Okay. So I want to pull this guy over. Whoop whoop. And then let's talk Colorado budget. So, if you did not know, Colorado has a budget deficit. So, from last year to this year, our expectation of how much money we would have is down, and it's not a small amount. It is like 1.2, it's somewhere between 1.2 and like $1.4 billion, which is a lot of millions. It's a lot of money. I want to say the Colorado state budget somewhere between 16, 17. One of the graphics at the end has the number on it. And so we're going to dive into what that means for our state. How did we get here? What led to this budget deficit? And what are the processes in place for us moving forward on what gets cut? And it all circles back to this very powerful committee of representatives of both our House and Senate here in the state. So I believe if I push this button, I guess yep, I can move my screen down. I think I can turn that back on too and bring it down, and I can be right there. Perfect. I'll scoot over a little. So these are 2025's Joint Budget Committee members. There's 3 from the top row are the senators, and the bottom row are the House of Representative members. The party leadership meets, and depending on how many seats each party gets and who is the majority party is how many seats you get on these committees. And then party leadership picks people to go into each committee. So this is one of Colorado state legislative committees, the Joint Budget Committee, but there's an environmental committee, there is, I want to say, there's a agricultural committee, there are education committee, and so when people present bills, typically they will, once they get introduced, will get assigned to a committee. And this committee special because often it happens after it gets signed to, let's say, education committee. There is maybe a bill on a tax credit for teachers. If it gets approved, because there is an amount of money attached to it, it has to then also get approved into the budget by the Joint Budget Committee. So every law that has an amount of money attached to it has to go through this group of people. And so some of the names we have on there are Jeff Bridges, Judy Amable, Barb Kirkmeyer, Shannon Bird, Emily Sirota, and Rick Taggart. And we're going to go into a bit of a timeline of the budget. So our budget year in Colorado goes July to June. And so we get a quarterly forecast in June, September, seeing how things are going. We get these so that people know if our assumptions and expectations are matching what we're seeing, and we can map accordingly. In November 2024, Governor submits the fiscal year 25-26 budget, but it's not binding. And each of the judicial branch agencies, the Attorney General, the Secretary of the State, and the State Treasurer all submit their own budget. So all these state level, or I don't know if the judicial branch is state level or if they are like how big those branches are. I don't know if we have multiple, but all these positions, they submit their budgets of how they think the taxpayer money should be spent. And starting this process, November 2024, the Joint Budget Committee is picked after the elections where we know how many seats goes to each party. And so right actually near the end of the election, once these seats are picked for the committee, the Joint Budget Committee starts their staff briefings and begins to hear hearings. They begin to have hearings from different agencies about the budget. So it begins right away, and so most state legislators are working in some capacity throughout the year to stakehold, to work on their legislation, but this group in particular really gets to work because they have to make a lot of decisions in a short amount of time. Sometime in December, they get another quarterly forecast. And then in January, as the session starts, JBC meets with committees of reference to discuss the budget requests submitted by those agencies for which each committee has oversight and asks input concerning specific budget requests. The meetings continue. Governor, judicial branch agencies, independent elected officials submitted amendments to the budget. So you start to make what the final budget is, and as you start sharing it with people, people can submit amendments. What do they want to see changed? The conversations continue, and then it introduces dozens of bills to make adjustments and related statutory changes to the budget. Changes to last year's budget to become the New Year's budget. That leads us into March, where get another quarterly forecast, works to balance and finalize the budget. aka the long bill and any accompanying bills in the budget package are introduced, debated, and passed in the first chamber. April, long bill and accompanying bills in the budget package are introduced, debated, and passed in the second chamber. Long bill goes to conference committee. Long bill is signed by governor. And then more or less the legislative session ends. So that is the process overall, and people will work to, if they have a bill that has an amount of money attached to it, work to lobby, convince, and share why it's important for it to be covered, and they go to that group, that Joint Budget Committee group. We have something, I think this is relatively new. I don't know if this was passed last year or within the last 2 or 3, but state budget and policy decisions are to be made using data, research, and evidence, and to invest in activities that allow the state to continually monitor, evaluate, and support its priorities. And each part of the bill and where the money goes gets an evidence designation. That is evidence-informed, promising, proven, harmful, or insufficient evidence. And then the best available research evidence refers to finding the most rigorous and relevant studies available, identified systematically. Overall, we have a pretty tight budget here in Colorado. We'll get into the specifics of why it is hard to adjust to some certain different circumstances. Because of Tabor and how we can increase taxes or change taxes to afford certain things. But this little part, I mean, just in general, tracking where you put money, what it's for, and if it's having the impact you want to have is just smart. Let's be real. But because we have those additional barriers, it's especially important here in Colorado. All right, so let's start talking about some of those constraints. I have to blow my nose, so I'm going to do that off camera, LOL, so that I aren't stuffied. Okay. All right, feels good so far. Feels good so far. All right. Okay. And then I need this up. Perfect. Okay. And then, boom. So, statutory budget constraints. Let's see if this overlay, if I bring it down a little bit so that you can see that. Perfect. So, we have something in Colorado called TABOR. It is called the Taxpayers Bill of Rights, is what the acronym stands for. We are the only state with TABOR, and it was written by a Republican from California who moved to Colorado and got here and was like, let's not make Colorado California, because being like one of the world's largest economies as a state is not where we should be at. I think honestly he didn't like taxes. He was able to convince other people who didn't like taxes. They got this passed. Seems fine maybe from first glance, but it really kind of limits what our state government is able to do in a lot of different areas. And it kind of comes down to just how much money does our state government have, and for us to change it, another thing written into TABOR is any changes to it or our tax code has to go to the voters of Colorado. And most people, when they see some type of tax change or tax cut, and then as soon as the ads start rolling in, they become kind of contentious and hard to pass. I think maybe the only exception to this is sports betting taxes and maybe marijuana taxes, or like drug, or nicotine, technically a drug, I guess. Type of taxes on certain substances. I mean, we still have to bring them to the state to decide on, but changing TABOR has been difficult for a few different reasons. And we'll get to one of those reasons being the TABOR check, and that sometimes will go out to different people. But honestly, it has this wider impact, and so we should have this longer discussion about, do we want to be the only state with this thing that kind of stops us? And I think especially when we get to the part where it's affecting our education, our medical care, and public infrastructure projects, there are certain things that are like better if we just do them at the government level. But how does this work out? So appropriations can only grow from the prior year by an amount equal to 5% of Colorado personal income. So appropriations is how much money that the government brings in, and from one year to the next can only grow by an amount equal to 5% of Colorado personal income. This last few years, I don't know if you're feeling it within your bubbles or wherever you might be watching this from, but personal income is down. I think people are struggling, working to get by. Softening labor market drives down income, so less jobs, people kind of struggling to find a well-paying job that helps them get by, as well as, I believe this is covered later, but aging demographics, they have less income, and migration to the state is down. And so all these factors come in that the amount it grew, our state was able to bring in more than previous years, was down. On top of this, there's 2 tax credits that have been affecting our recent tax years. One is this Colorado Earned Income Tax Credit, which negative $182.5 million. And then the Family Affordability Tax Credit creates an income tax credit for Coloradans with children ages 16 and under, which 23 to 24 was negative 130. Okay, try that again. 23 to 24 was negative 327 million. 24 to 25 is negative 684 million. And 25 to 26 is negative 739 million. So most of these slides, all these slides, I got from a Good Business Colorado workshop that I went to, and it was put on by, I have their names. This was the Salazar and Associates workshop, and how they explained it was these tax credits, good for Colorado working families, bad for our budget. And so it's like one of these things where it's like there's play and there's sometimes benefits, but there's sometimes an adjustment that might be bigger than you might have expected. And so we'll dive a little bit deeper into this. So the change in state fiscal year spending for the next year is restricted to inflation plus percentage change in state population in the prior calendar year. Inflation is dropping and population growth is slowing. So Tabor wrote all these formulas over 20 years ago that may have been, at that time, population's booming, the economy is doing well, people feel comfortable having and starting families, and people are seeing Colorado, maybe moving from states where the housing market's getting a little crazy, and so these formulas at those times may have been showing really positive progress. As economies change and the local situation changes, it doesn't really reflect, and so these formulas make it so that we get less money and less growth sometimes. The base for calculating the allowable growth is a lesser of either actual revenue or the allowable limit. So we're seeing a revenue decline of either actual revenue or the allowable limit. And then aging population means less income taxes paid. I won't lie to y'all, I'm definitely not a Tabor expert. A lot kind of goes into it. But if we go on to the next one, there's another part about our system here in Colorado. So in 2005, Referendum C was approved by voters, and it authorizes the state to retain and spend money in excess of the Tabor limit by setting a new excess revenue cap. So this was the first and last update to Tabor was 20 years ago. LOL. And then in 2005, they passed this and it was voted in by the voters. The excess state revenue cap is equal to the highest annual total state revenue from 05 to 06 through 09 to 10, adjusted each subsequent fiscal year for inflation, the percentage change in state population, enterprises, and debt services charges, The excess revenue can be spent on healthcare, education, including related capital construction projects, retirement plans for firefighters and police officers, and strategic transportation projects. For 24 to 25, this excess revenue was approximately 1.2 billion. I believe I have a graph here. Yes. So this gold line at the top introduced in 2005, though only came into play later because it took a while for the revenue to kind of get near that cap. But there's this gold bar area that is determined by a different formula, or a part of the formula, and it allows us to get a little bit more money than Tabor normally allows, based on a formula. And you can see it here, it changes. So like 24, this revenue area, 23, 24 was 1.4 billion. It was even high 21, 22. And that amount of chunk of money can go to certain programs in education and in that list I just described. This middle blue area, purple, is the general fund below the Tabor cap of where does that formula say? And you can see how we've gone from about 9 billion in this area to about, what are we at, 20? About 20, well that's 26, 27 estimations. So if we go 24, 25, the year we're in, these 2 years right here, we're about, actually if I do this, will it work? Perfect. About 19 billion. And about half a billion to more is in this extra category. You can cancel. And then, in actuality, we have this cash fund revenue subject to Tabor. There is a part of Tabor that's set aside for cash fund revenue that is set by a different part of the formula that's kind of just like set aside. It's about $2 billion that adds into things. I don't remember which part of these the Tabor refunds come out of. Let's see if I can pull it up. By what? Excess revenue to be fronted to taxpayers. Okay. So I think that part is different. But essentially, if the state raises more than this amount of money, it can, rather than the state be able to use it, it's like there's a state tax rate, everyone files out their paperwork, they pay their taxes, Colorado gets those taxes, they count up all the money, they say, oh, we raised more than our formula. Well, we got to give that amount of money back to the people, determine a process, and I think I've gotten Tabor checks that were like $400 before, or like, I think like 100 or 200. Not very clear from the person getting the check's perspective what goes into it, to be honest. And it actually kind of leads to a weird like mental, like, maybe not hypocrisy, but like dichotomy, because you get a check back from your government, your state government, and you're like, damn, catch this. And the state must be doing well. Let alone the state doing well is not determined by that amount that they give back to you. It's determined by a separate formula. And if that formula has a bad year, have to make cuts. And this could be just completely separate than that refund check. So people might be like, the state's doing well, when in actuality, we have to cut over $1 billion of spending. which is the situation we're in now. So we'll go through this overview. Budget overview. General fund spending has exceeded the annual revenues available for appropriation for the past several years. Now that the excess revenue is gone, spending through appropriations and transfers from the general fund will have to align with annual revenues, reducing flexibility that has been available to the General Assembly since 2020 and 2021. That large goal area is less. We have to adjust. Aligning with annual revenues will all require spending reductions and or measures to make additional revenues available. The caseload increases for Medicaid, school finances, and corrections alone will exceed the annual increase in general fund available in 25 to 26. So we're spending more than we're bringing in. And this is the last slide. This one kind of just goes over some of the dates from December to February. In the Joint Budget Committee, it heavily weighted towards even before the session starts and then the first kind of 2 months of session of introducing bills, trying to get them through committee so that they can make their way to the Joint Budget Committee. If I go back to this though, and if I pull up my other thing of notes, we can take a look at some of these numbers of where does this money go. As that last slide said, Medicaid caseload is up and use of services is up. And so these lead to increased budgets as these are government healthcare programs. There are a few things that our state has to fund. It's Medicaid. It is the school education system. And I want to say it's public service, like firefighters and police officers. And so there are these areas that the government has to spend money first, and then after that can determine what's left. Colorado education is about $8 billion of our state budget. It is the largest item, and that is followed by Medicaid, which is a third of our budget. So we have it here at about $18 billion. And so about a third of that, 4, 8, 12, 5, is about 5.5 is the Medicaid, and then about 8 of it is our education system. So that leaves about 5 left for other things. Our education is determined by, it's also kind of an equation. It's like a enrollment equation of like how much money per student, and then this is such a funny system. Schools will have like a few days each year where they take attendance, and then the attendance on those days becomes their enrollment number, and then by those enrollment numbers, they get an amount of money per student. I heard that they are going to take a look at this enrollment equation this year, I think partially because of these recent budget shortfalls, but essentially it is something that is being hit by multiple sides. If we switch back to this one, some family tax credits that were submitted and passed were used at a higher rate and had a larger impact than was expected, and so we are getting less revenue in from our previous formula. So we had our formula for tax revenue, and so we're getting some less from families. Good for them. It just impacts our state budget. Additionally, the amount Tabor grew this year is less than expected, so growth is down. And then additionally, costs are up. And I think this is primarily on the Medicaid side, but more people fall into the level of poverty. that allows them to get government health care. And so more people are need to be covered by government health care, and so the amount we need to spend towards that goes up. Leaving us in a situation where we have 1.2 billion less to spend, and so heading into that, our governor, some people proposed budgets that had some different spending cuts, and the Joint Budget Committee is now taking those budget suggestions and working them to a place. We're likely going to need to cut some types of educational programming. Some of that $8 billion that goes to education, it doesn't all, I think, go to the who was it? Goes to that enrollment equation. I think some of it can go to additional programs and mental health support in schools, counselor support, and after school programs. And so these are all things that they won't immediately impact our school systems, but because we're determining the budget for next year, we could be seeing cuts to school positions, school programs, but also a rippling effect is transportation industries. Maybe there was a special tax credit that restaurants were getting. Some people read the full budget and then will put together an 8-page, these are the things you need to know. And I actually might have that document. There was a workshop that day where someone shared, not there, downloads maybe? Download, get the download. LA Fires, not that one. Not that one. How about this one? Let's see. Not that one. The Agenda for America's Entrepreneurs. Not that one either. Okay. So I don't have that with me today, but some organizations will take the proposed budgets, they'll bring it down, they will work to synthesize the information and be like, here are the cuts to education, here are the cuts to transportation, environmental infrastructure, and then that Joint Budget Committee takes it and determines what to do with it. Anything else I want to touch on? What does this mean for our legislative session? I think is the kind of the big question now up in the air. And what I'm hearing from people is we will be not really passing bills that have a cost associated with them. So let me go like this for a sec. So we have to cut over $1 billion from our budget from last year, or from this last kind of 12 months heading into the next 12 months. The fiscal year switches over in July. And so the Joint Budget Committee right now is working on what those cuts are, using input from other senators, House of Representative members, the governor, and some other government people. Often the legislative session, what can get funded or not is like a back and forth. Like, you have to have good reasoning. There has to be other bills out there that don't take larger priority. Some good things will pass committee, but ultimately not get funded, and so they'll get kicked down the road to the next year. We're kind of in a situation right now where most bills that have an amount of money attached to them are not going to get passed, because we're already having to cut just like everyday things that our country, not a country or a company, that our state helps provide. And And so a lot of legislators are have to get creative with the kind of bills they pass. So I heard one bill that, an environmental bill that oil and gas companies already have to gather information about air quality and different environmental data points that they submit to government agencies. And theoretically, if a person needs to get the information, they can go to that government agency, but sometimes the file paperwork's hard to get and whatnot. And so their idea for a bill was, why don't we already have this information, and if you go through the right streams to get it, you can get it. Why not have these companies post their environmental reports on their own website? And this is something that we can be like, hey, do this, or maybe you get fined, or maybe you lose your leases. And so doesn't cost the state anything, but we can make this pass that makes it easier for people to track the air quality around where they live if they live near a fracking well. Other bill changes that won't necessarily have a cost associated with them is this big push. I don't have the bill name in front of me. What is the Colorado? It's the one that's helping union groups in the state and workers. Here in Colorado, to unionize, you have to pass 2 union votes. You have to get like an initial group of people to say, hey, we want to unionize. And then over a period of weeks, you have to hold a second vote. And I think it goes from like a 45% threshold to 60% threshold. Those percentages might be a little bit off, but not only do you have to have a second vote, but your threshold for every worker that needs to approve of the union goes up. And that also gives time for the companies to come in and be like, what do we need to do to not have our people unionized? And I know it's like technically illegal, but like companies still do it. And so let's see if I can pull up that one. If I move this over here, this is our Colorado website for our General Assembly, our legislature. I didn't actually let you see. There we go. And sometimes they have like the popular bills, most access bills, semi-automatic firearms and rapid fire devices, intoxicating substances and social equity. This is the schedule for the Joint Budget Committee. And browse all bills. I'm surprised the one bill isn't on here. Business and economic development, maybe? Is labor an option? Labor and employment. There you go. This is it. Someone is home. Okay. This might be right here. Regardless, those are some of the ideas then of how can we still pass bills when there's not really money. Where did the money go? It's elsewhere. It's elsewhere. And so we'll have a budget kind of adjustment, and we'll kind of hope for it to get better. And that's kind of where we're at here in Colorado. Is where we're at. Any questions? Any questions? my one of your, which is hello. Okay. Which I think is just my like tech check. Tech check. We will move on now to the next part of our agenda. Let's see where we are at. And I need a new Google Doc because we're going to do some work together. Okay. Moving on to our next section. Hearing no questions. Moving on. So, we have our legislature, we have inner legislature, we have different committees, and when one of our representatives on the Senate side or the House side, they propose a bill, it gets introduced, it gets brought up for discussion, and then it actually, I think it gets introduced, it gets read, and then it gets assigned a committee. I think the general discussion actually happens on the second or third reading, but the first place and the most important place, one of the most important places on if a bill moves forward is the committee. I can pull up, let's pull up, I just had it up, the state legislature website, and we will move and scan these committees briefly before diving deeper into this. So here are the House committees of reference on the House side and the Senate committees of reference. These are the groups where bills will go, and I believe it is the party in power that gets to determine within reason where a bill goes. So sometimes there might be an energy and environment bill that touches also on agriculture and water, and it's kind of up to the team in charge here in Colorado, Democrats, of where those get pushed. Sometimes there's this thing called a kill committee, which sometimes will be like maybe not like the best place for a bill to go. I mean, arguably still a place that the bill touches, but that might have people on the committee itself who will just, people will know, will kind of like vote against it. But for the most part, it goes to the committee, and each of these committees is made up by different people. So this is appropriations. This also has to do with changes to expenditures and revenues that affect the budget. But let's go on one that maybe makes a little bit more energy and environment. And funny enough, they're still working on updating pictures for certain people. But these are the members of this committee. And so we present. So let's say Junie Joseph has an environmental bill. Even though she's on the committee, she can still submit a bill for this area. And then it goes to committee, it gets a date, it goes publicly on the calendar, and during that committee date is where people can have their input and testify on the bill, whether they're support or against this bill. And so, I don't know if there's a picture of a committee room in here. Committee information, committee room policy. Oh yeah, there's all these, this is funny. These are like the rules for being in the committee rooms. So Colorado State Capitol has a bunch of rooms in the building itself, and I think even a few rooms on like buildings near it that are the committee rooms. And so typically in the mornings, there's like the general sessions, and then you have lunch, and then committees begin. So around 1 p.m. you might find your way to the Energy and Environment Committee because there's a bill you want to testify on. Junie Joseph maybe put out to her people that this is the bill that she is working on. And supporters will come. If there's opposition groups, they will bring people to speak against it. And sometimes you find people in the middle, some people from like different agencies, maybe chambers of commerce, will come out and speak on the bill. And so you have a time, let's say it's 1 p.m. The meeting starts. It has all the committee members in there, and you're kind of talking all of them. They have like a big, I have pictures of this somewhere, and maybe on the YouTube video it will be like, here's this room, but I don't have them right in front of me right now. That said, all the people are there. The bill's sponsors, so if we go back to committees and committees, we'll go back to energy and environment, and let's click on, let's see, this is their schedule for 1/16, so they haven't been as active as a committee. They've only met once so far, but a lot of bills are still being introduced, so committees tend to be, you have to introduce the bills, they go to committee, so it's normal for that to still take some time. Let's say on this bill, Junie Joseph and Manny Routenell are the prime sponsors. There's the circular desk with all the committee members. They would walk from their desk at the committee front to the table that presents to them, and they would begin a process of reading their bill and bringing up expert witnesses. You can present a bill to the committee, and I believe you can vote on it still as well. If you're the chair of the committee, you have to appoint someone for the rest of the day to be the chair because they help conduct the meeting. But other than that, you can step away, you can be the one presenting the bill. The person presenting the bill brings up expert witnesses to speak on their behalf and give us additional points of view. And then there becomes the point of public testimony. Here in Colorado, every bill has to do a public testimony situation. People have to get a chance to talk, and everyone who signs up has to get a chance to talk. So, depending on if it's a contentious bill or not, those meetings might go to 1 a.m. It kind of becomes funny at a certain point, because it's like, how many people are listening to, like, how many people are actually dialed into that many, like, pieces of feedback? Let alone, like, some people who, like, already have their mind made up and are just kind of, like, chilling. And you can speak. You're normally given 3 minutes to talk, but they can lower the amount of time you have to talk to 2 minutes. And so sometimes I have, like, this, like, testimony prepared where I'm talking about, like, the environmental impacts, or like the lives impacted and why an alternative is the better option, and like tie in like my personal story, and we're about to get into like what makes a good testimony. But then you like get there, it's like a busy day, and then like they make the decision to make everyone's statement 2 minutes, and you're like, oh, I have to cut out a third of what I was going to say. And sometimes they're like, they cut you off right away once there's a clock, and it changes colors as you get down to like 15 seconds, and then it cuts off. And sometimes they'll let you like say a few more sentences still, but sometimes they'll be like, they'll cut off your microphone. And how did I get here from here? Oh, I just want to including this space, a conspicuous statement is supportive on this opportunity to English, they could not be allowed to come here. We're going to address the committee when the chair has proposed testimony. You can sign up electronically by scanning the QR below or going to the Colorado General Assembly website. If testifying remotely, you must sign up before the bill has begun. You may sign up to testify in person or submit written testimony through the website until the bill has been concluded. So additional options, the state's big. There's digital testimony, which I believe they started in 2020 and they've just kept around. But you could also type out your testimony and send it to the committee and those on it. It is inappropriate to cheer, boo, talk, or applaud in the committee meeting. Rallies, protests, and demonstrations are not allowed. Signs, placards, banners, pins, or other display materials are not allowed. Clothing displays a conspicuous statement in the support of or in opposition of any legislation before the committee will not be allowed. The committee chair determines if photography, video, or audio recordings may be taken during the committee meeting. If permitted, the committee chair may require that persons making video or audio recordings do so from a specified area or areas in the committee room in order to avoid a disturbance or blocking public access. Please turn off your cell phone as may be disruptive. No food or drink other than bottled water. And the committee chair may request a sergeant at arms remove a person who's impeding. Okay. This is interesting because I've been asked to... So I wear bananas and hats sometimes. I'm bald. This is part of my style. It's part of my keeping my head warm sometimes. I've been asked to take off that before. And now looking at these like rules, why are they asking me to take off my hat / bandana? It's not even on the things that's not allowed. Next time I'm there, I'm gonna wear a bandana. I'm gonna walk in and see what they say, and then I'll be like, show me the rules. Anywho. Show them to me. And so then it begins the committee's time for public testimony. It can go 25 minutes. It can go hour and a half. It can go 12 hours. Just depends how many people are there and choose to stick around to get their time slot. Some orgs before have like bussed people in, gave them food, paid them, ? I'm not 100% sure if that's allowed, but I know sometimes there'll be like these blasts of emails be like, oppose this environmental bill, and then people on those email chains will get a link and they can like sign up, and then they'll get transportation and food for showing up and sticking around. I'm curious on if you can hear my mom yelling at the pups. And then after testifying, back to the process. After testifying, the bill's prime sponsors then get a chance to do some conclusory remarks. They can, I don't think they can bring up witnesses anymore, but there is allowed a time of Q&A between the committee and the sponsors. Oh, another point is when you testify, the committee is allowed to ask you questions. So depending on if you have like a bunch of research in what you have to say, they might ask you a question. I've seen middle schoolers go and testify before, and people ask like, hey, who helped organize you all getting down here? Or like, why are you so active? And they're like these like everyday questions, but depending on what you have in your stuff, you could get questions while you're up on talking. There's typically they bring up witnesses 4 at a time, and you each give your 2 to 3 minutes of speaking, and then they ask you to leave, and then leave the dais, the stand, and then they call the next people to talk. Sometimes they'll do like a back and forth of like for and against. I think it's up to the chair of which order to call witnesses, and it can be really powerful. Some of the remarks people give, how many people show up, people with very prestigious backgrounds giving these like really well like research orientated like testimonies, but also personal stories can have a huge impact. So it really kind of depends on like who you are and your connection with the proposed policy and the points you want to focus on. Now, since we've gone over it, anything else? Anything else? That happens, the prime sponsors of the bill come back up. And hold on, I might need to check on something. Where was I? The end of testimony. So the public testifies. The prime sponsors come back to the dais to ask any final questions or answer any final questions from the committee. And then there's this period where amendments can be proposed, which will be slight changes to the bill. That said, there is this like weird or interesting interaction where you can't make amendments that change the scope of the title. So let's say your title of your bill was like after 3 years clean up old wells, and then like during the process you find out that it's actually very important that you clean up a well within 1 year. Like you made the title clean up wells within 3 years, and so the committee can argue that what you're trying to change changes the scope of the bill and cannot change the bill itself. So sometimes you'll be like, oh, there's this compromise in what we can do, but then you'll have some opposition that wants none of this to happen, and so they'll try to get you down to be like, hey, this isn't what the original title is in the scope of. Sorry, you can't do that. And if the committee votes it's outside of the scope, they don't even have to vote against like the amendment itself. They can just be like, no, you can't change it. It's more or less the same ending, but they don't have to be on record voting like against it. And then after that, the committee then can choose to accept and vote on the different amendments, and then after that, they'll vote on the bill itself. If it passes the committee, it'll go from like the Senate to the House. It has to pass committees on both sides, and then it'll eventually go to the General Assemblies to be approved. I want to say it's that order. I think it might go Senate committee, Senate floor, House committee, House floor. I'm not 100% positive, actually. I just know you got to pass the committees, and sometimes this is more contentious because it's a smaller group of people. But on the plus side, you'll know like some of the specific people you need to talk to try to get support. All to say, that anyone can help go speak on bills. And we are going to briefly talk about what makes a good testimony. So, giving public testimony. Submit. Giving public testimony. Tips and tricks. Tips. We don't need tricks. I like tricks, but you know, whatever. Giving public testimony. Tips and tricks. We'll put it in there anyways. Okay. There are elements of storytelling involved here, and there are elements of coalition building and expertise that all kind of play into being able to persuade an elected official to try to like vote in your way or help vote in a way that supports something that you support, or I guess against something that you are against. Some of this work is done ahead of time, building relationships with people, but for the most everyday people that aren't lobbyists or lobby groups or groups that pay lobbyists, which typically kind of like negative connotations but can be positive. For example, this group called Good Business Colorado focuses on small businesses, and they can still hire a firm using some of the membership money they have to push for bills that would help small businesses. Environmental orgs can have lobbyists. Oil and gas companies can have lobbyists. Oil and gas companies tend to have lots more lobbyists. And that's kind of a little bit of the tricksy part is some organizations and groups have that wealth to build those relationships and do research and try to hit things from different angles. On the people power side, we still have our voices and our ability to reach out and try to persuade people. And I think especially at the state level, and here in Colorado where public has the ability to speak on things, though it's not like televised, I think the audio is recorded, and technically you could get the video if you like sign up to testify, because on the Zoom call there's video, but it's harder to like make political moments with just the audio, because I'm a video lad. Who doesn't want video? But during this testifying, we each can put our voice into things. And so there's aspects of personal story and personal impact, personal emotions, and there's also this aspect of trying to provide scientific conclusions. I think honestly a good testimony combines both. But sometimes the personal story or the research, I think the personal stories are often the most like emotionally pulling. But I think you have to do both. And maybe not you yourself have to do both, but if you're on a team that's working to do an assortment of public testimony, you want to hit multiple aspects of persuasion. And so also leaning into your personal story has a lot of power. It's hard to argue against. It's lived experience. So it's channel an element of impact through personal story, channel element of impact through personal story, or how this impacts everyday people. You also want to bring research and information on why a bill is good, bad, or has room for improvement. So if you're someone who's doing the longer stakeholding with both your community and the elected officials that represent you, you can often craft amendments to bills from when they're introduced and the committee to improve them in some way. Maybe there is a food justice bill and it is missing that certain areas are food deserts and might need additional resources. So you could add some type of amendment in that accounts for that. Or if you're not doing that, you can still offer the suggestions as part of your public testimony. So I've talked on bills before, and I've talked about how I would improve them, and I've added that kind of into my time. Often if you're not doing the stakeholding beforehand, maybe those amendments don't get taken in, because if the meeting starts at 1, public testimony is at 1:30, public testimony ends at 2:30, does people on that dais have a lot of time to chew and like think through what you have to say? Or the sponsor of the bill? They have some time, but they're also trying to manage like volunteers, or like maybe there's a specific person who is like holding out on saying they'll support it or not, and so it can happen. But if you're going to make an amendment, it's likely that you want to start doing some work before the day, and writing out and suggesting it through email or the spot or in person conversations how you would improve the bill, and maybe they'll take it, and maybe they won't. But you get your 2 to 3 minutes where you go and speak. And these are kind of like, the big areas to push on. And so every bill's different. And so what your life experience or how you see this impacting the people around you will change. In general, just getting out there to speak on it is good, because it gives a sense of where public like support or pressure is. And yeah, there's never like, you never want to have like 10 people opposing a bill and maybe like only one person who comes out to say something positive against it. It's just not normally like a good look. It might not change things. Let's say it's like a anti-LGBTQ plus bill. It's like, if you are in favor of like the human rights side of that and all of the people against it are like, these aren't people, then it's like, do you really need to match them? I mean, it's good to match and or have more people come out, but the fact that this is a weekday afternoon activity can make it hard to be the in-person element of speaking. But then I guess that's why there is that written testimony, that virtual testimony that you can submit. And it has to be 3 minutes long and practiced. But you also have to be ready to cut it to 2 minutes. I've seen this happen multiple times, and one of the times I wasn't even ready, and I'm just like, okay, I cut out this sentence, and I was like, I think this sounds good. It's missing key elements of like who I am and why I'm speaking about this, but so if you're prepared for like this section is optional, or like maybe your full testimony is like 2.5 minutes and you're like, this sentence is optional, and if it goes down to 2 minutes, I just speak as quickly as possible. And I think it's one of these things where it's like, sometimes you just need practice. So pick some bills that can speak or email legislators about, and then do so. And so, like, I think this still happens to me. I've testified over like 7 times, eight times. I don't actually know who keeps. It's at least 7 times. And I will have my statement. I'll have, I'm dressed as, I'm ready to be presentable. I sit in the room. Sometimes there's an overflow room, but sometimes you can sit in the room itself. You get called up and you sit there alongside some other people. Some maybe you know, and some are like allies, and you kind of like coordinated what you're gonna say, and sometimes you're just up there. And then you get called on, and it's just like, even though I've done it a bunch of times, and even though in my head I can ground into being like, my viewpoint is valuable and helpful, and these are just people like me who just happen to be in this role of public service, I will like still sometimes get up there and I'm like shaking. And it's like, it's hard to prep for nerves like that sometimes. It's like, I can imagine the room, I can imagine me doing it the 6 times before, and I show up the 7th time, and I'm like, I am super cool, awesome, my voice is valuable. And then I'm like having my phone, and I'm like, oop, put my phone down so they can't see my hand shaking. Or like, yeah, try to hide it in some way. And it's just like, I think that's one of those things that just comes with practice. And so if this is something that you're like, I have some time to speak on bills, I have some time to research and show up, do it every once in a while. Find something that you're like, okay, this day I'm available. These are some of the bills coming through committees this day. Or opposite, you'd be like, this is a topic I am passionate about. This committee has these meetings the next few weeks. Any bills on those meetings and that I want to go speak to, and does the day work? Go speak. Because I think it just comes with practice of being able to deliver when in the room versus beforehand. And funny enough, I think it's sometimes more impactful to have one-on-ones with people, which I guess has its own kind of like nerves when you're meeting with like an elected official or like their staff, because you just like, yeah, I want to make a good impression, and that's like, maybe next month we'll do our a little workshop or section of our live stream that's on those one-on-one conversations, how to get them and how you're supposed to like go about it, to have like that positive impact, and see if that person aligned with you on your values or what their pushback is. It's a very valuable type of meeting to hold. That said, testifying is its own skill set that has its own ways of impacting legislative changes. I know not all states have to allow public testimony. So like some states, things can go to committee. The people on the committee itself can be the main leaders of the conversation. And then they're like, the person that's doing the bill can like call up some witnesses. And then they're like, oh, there's a group of 20 people outside that want to speak against this. It's like, we don't have to let them say anything. So thankful for here in Colorado that is different, because you are allowed your voice on every bill. And to the point where if you get enough people together, you can make it go into the AMs of the next day, which is kind of rad. It's kind of crazy when you're like trying to help out on those bills and you're like, this is a lot of energy time sink. But sometimes it's like foundational or important things that you want to show that there's that level of support for. To push back against it, like the smaller group of paid people that are there from a certain org or company to fight for that group's interests. And anything else I want to say in testimony. It's 3 minutes long in practice. And practice / time it for yourself. But you also have to be ready to cut 2 minutes. Yeah, and I think work to present how you present yourself really matter that much. I mean, I think it's like one thing if you show up in like sweats, but like, does it really matter if you're in like dress pants and like a suit? I actually don't think so. So I was gonna put like work to present self in authentic and way that makes self feel comfortable and / or powerful. Because I think that has energy to it, where it's like, if you're comfortable, you can bring that energy. Or if you're like a power outfit, that will help give say to your words, but I don't actually think like an actual dress code matters that much. I guess it's dependent on who's on that committee. Some people give that more emphasis and like will make those like subconscious or like automatic thoughts. But I think as long as you're feeling comfortable and powerful, that is fine. And yeah, I just say like be passionate about subject, and more can pull emotional impact of decision, the better. We are human, and what that means is it's often not actually like more facts that change things. I think there's a type of person who really looks for the science and what is the scientifical thing that like improves the situation where possible. But I actually think like on a deeper level, we're ran by emotions, and so when it comes to persuasion, that is more important, or at least is important to tie in to the more research-based pushes. And those are our tips and tricks for testimony. I will have an example on our YouTube page soon. I was recently included in I was going to do this live, but we're behind time, and so I want to speed it up. But I was reached out to recently about a bill in Arizona that is going to their legislature, which is about every kid getting a free school lunch. And so we passed that in Colorado. I want to say it was 1 or 2 years ago. And I actually worked in elementary school services program for multiple months last year. And so when I saw their campaign push, I had that personal connection of seeing kids not have to worry about the stresses of getting food, and had some interactions with kids where didn't have lunches but were able to rely on the school system to get 1 to 2, because I think in Colorado they're allowed to get breakfast and a lunch. And so I have to look at the Arizona one to see if they do that as well. But I mean, regardless, as long as like, I remember there are some kids who would like sometimes go up to the counter to try to get seconds, and they would try, and seconds cost money. And I would see in their account that they had no money in their account. But like, if we didn't have that free school program, and would that kid even get a first meal? Would they have that? And some kids had like $200 in their account, and they were like able to get seconds every day. But then there were kids who would like, they would maybe get like $20 a month from their parents too, that they would have to spread out. And you're not like supposed, I mean, you're just supposed to kind of just like help them go through that process. And also in our system, they have to get like fruits and vegetables as part of their meal. And so it's just kind of like reliable aspect. And it's not without its challenges. It definitely increased the rate of how many kids are getting school lunches versus packing one. But even with like the increased labor, and some days we're busy. And some days we had to have like someone else come in to help someone because they were sick. And that's its own struggle in schools, is why are there so many germs? Why are there so many germs? But regardless, if our team had the support, can get through that. And so I was going to put together a video testimony to send to them that they can help post that shares that perspective of the impact that this bill has had in Colorado from that food services and in the school standpoint, that I thought would be nice to kind of type out and write out here. But we are over time, so I will do that later, and I will post the video to our YouTube. And then I might additionally do a short video that I record where I talk through my script and the thinking that went into different parts of the script. And if I have different versions of the script as I go through the editing process. So stay tuned for that. But overall, if there's a bill you're looking at getting involved with, here are our tips and tricks for giving public testimony. Channel an element of impact to personal story or how this impacts everyday people. Personal story, story of a friend, bring in that human level of impact. Bring research and information on why a bill is good, bad, or has room for improvement. And you can even include in there what you would change to improve it. This is typically 3 minutes long, and you want to practice to time it for yourself so that you're hitting that time without getting overwhelmed or getting cut off on an important part. But you also have to be prepared to cut it down to 2 minutes. And sometimes you just need to practice, so pick some bills that can speak to or email legislators about, and then do so to get that practice in. Work to present self in an authentic way, in a way that makes you feel comfortable and or powerful. I think that at the end of the day is what matters most, is the energy you're putting forward when you're speaking or writing, and then be passionate about the subject and more to pull in that emotional impact of the impact that a bill can have. Be passionate about subject and more. This sentence I did not fully do. Be passionate, I say bring passion to it. What are bring passion to it and key points you want to make. Glurp. Glurp. And that are tips and tricks for giving public. And and that, should I do full screen? No, we'll just leave it like that. And that are the tips and tricks for giving public testimony here in Colorado. Cool beans. What do we have left on our agenda? We're pretty much done. Cool. We don't have extra time, so I won't go look at a few bills. We did this fun thing last year where we put down a number of bills. We grabbed like 10 into a Google spreadsheet, and we gave each a number of like 1 to 10, and then we would roll a random number generator or dice, depending on how many numbers there were there. And then depending on like the number, we would do like a 15-minute deep dive into that specific one. I am thinking of bringing that back, but maybe in like a more fun, interactive way. We'll have to see. But overall, we can switch back to Big Braden. Okay. So we've had some good conversations today around the Colorado budget situation, as well as what that means for bills this year. And we've also talked in length about testifying on bills, and how you can do that at the committee, and different tips and tricks for getting it done. Heading into the rest of this legislative session and year, our goal for Community Driven is patient building. And so we're turning our what was a weekly show last year into a monthly one, so we can spend more time on production on the front side and then editing on the tail end side. So some of these clips from today will become their own videos, which we will share across our channels to have that kind of easier way to engage on your own time. Additionally, we'll have in February, March, April, so we'll have 3 more live shows. I don't think May is covered. Maybe we'll do like a May like summary show, depending on if our April one is kind of, things are still moving along. Other content to look forward to. We are doing different tutorials on how a political party is formed and how you can influence it. I've heard some feedback lately that the political party is very overwhelming and complicated, and it is true. And so we have all the film or the footage for that video, and it's just a matter of me finishing the edit, so that will be up sometime this week. What are my other... Okay. I also have a journaling tool that I created and will be posting soon. So circling back to this theme of patient building and what that means for community driven. For this Policy Angles show, it means that we're going to reach out to more people to be included. We're going to reach out for some different voices, politicians, legislators, impact groups and nonprofits to either submit videos or subjects for us to discuss. I would like to have at least at one point like a live interview on the show. Could be really cool. So we have the policy show. Outside of that, we have a Patreon where we post behind the scenes content. So January's behind the scenes content, I shared a grant proposal I put together for a grant around activism. And so if you want that kind of like look into how do you present yourself as a social impact organization to try to bring in funds from different businesses, government, or programs, that is up there. And if you're a Patreon member, you also get some of our resources and videos and tools early. 2 of the bigger perks for there. And once we get it up and running, we'll also be doing a live Q&A back and forth with that group. I guess there's tiers, so not everyone, but that's the minutia of it. But what else? So we're working on a journal tool as the resource we're going to be releasing here soon. And then February, I've been thinking some of the social platforms been honestly struggling a little bit with. You get a lot of tips. It's about post like repetition. It's about hitting certain times of days when you post. It's about engagement and having posts that direct people to engage. And I've been struggling a little bit because I was building up some momentum, and some platforms I just saw like a deep dive in like views and interactions, and it got me thinking of like why that is and what has changed in the last year. And I think some of it is that I've been talking more about peace and the need to spend less on military funding and need for a ceasefire. I'm also like pretty vocal on certain climate issues, and we know that social media platforms have been changing the algorithms to share less political content with people who don't take in political content regularly. And also kind of just like I feel like ads have been popping up, and we've seen this like Twitter and X, and like Elon Musk posts showing up regularly when they don't even follow Elon Musk, and like behind the scenes, which of these platforms might actually have our best interests in mind, and on platforms, how do we best engage, build an audience, and grow so that we can have the live aspect of the show, or that back and forth, and really just the more people we can reach, especially with our educational tools and the impact we're trying to have, the better overall will we be at being able to fight for not just in government, but in all aspects of life for a better future, and structural changes that improve the lives of people. And so I've been cooking up that February is going to be algorithm month. And so what that means is we're going to do a series of videos and trials, the scientific method in certain ways as you might have it, around what are profiles, or what are the social media platforms that are easy to build on, or or might be like the methods to getting traction and building up interest in what we have to say. So we're gonna do a deep dive into the different social media platforms. We're gonna try out a number of different strategies to engage more proactively and intentionally. And over the month of February, gonna put together a report on how those strategies go. So we're gonna be doing more content. We're gonna be doing more commenting on other things people are working on, highlighting groups, posting across the platforms. And so February is gonna be our algorithm month, and hopefully that will help us grow our own channel and following, but also help put together tools, resources, and behind the scenes aspects of what it takes for a social impact creator, artist, business person to grow on these different platforms. So that is what to look forward to this next month. If you want to support, you can check us out on our website, communitydriven.group. You can also do communitydrivengroup.com, both work. I don't know why I had to say both, but ADHD, my brain's like, but also this. Um, on our website, you can check out more articles, other events. Arguably, I need to work on the website a little bit. I haven't updated it since November, so I gotta cook on that guy a little bit. But at the top right of our website, we have a fundraising portal where you can invest in the community driven in the content we're trying to put together. We are putting together. At the top right, there's a button where you can donate and invest into community driven and the content we're putting together. We have a number of educational tools, resources, products lined up for the year. We have this live show, and that's one way to support the overall bigger vision and the work we're doing, while also getting included into a group of people that when we take off and make it big, you get included into that growth and that impact. That's the goal there on that specific donation page. And then we also have a Patreon. And on our Patreon, we revamped it this last month to be more specific, and I will say the system we had before was a bit confusing, and I get why people were like, this is a little bit too much. So we simplified it. There's free options, there's paid options, a whole community there. Well, not yet, actually. We're building a community there, as well as some other community tools that group gets the first invite into, where you can support. And that is more of like a small dollar monthly donation where you get behind the scenes content and resources early, and a place to talk with other supporters in that realm. That is it from us for this month. The videos from here will be up soon. Should we put on a nice song to end it? I didn't play any music throughout today. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm not here with anyone, but so that I can do music later. I don't have to worry about it. But maybe for the next show, I'll work on having in our like run of show the document that helps me make sure I talk about all the things I want to talk about. Maybe next month, we'll have music for the different segments, and then I don't have to worry, and it'll be fun. And on that note, what's a good song? This song's called "You're Gonna Be Okay." It's a good song to end it, right? There we go. Hope you're taking care in this crazy year. The Trump inauguration was this week, and it was a heavy week. I did my best to like see aspects of it without like doing it for more than like 10-ish minutes at a time, to not like get too depressed. The TikTok stuff was pretty crazy. It was like 24 hours. It's so funny that some people were like making it a big deal and like buy TikTok, and it was like gone for a day. But the fact that they like selling out for the, who knows what, it's a thing in progress. We'll figure out what happens there. But the Donald Trump messages were like, it's so transparent, it's crazy. I circle back to like good community. Who are the local people that I am organizing with to make a difference? I also organize with like some national like groups that have like chapters across the country. That helps ground me too, because it's like we all see that we need this like zoomed out. We need a 4-year plan. We can't let another non-climate champion and like people-centered candidate be president. And so it's like these next 4 years we have to do community building. We have to do stakeholding, find people where they are, what are the issues, show them that we're ongoingly fighting for their lives to be better and our country to be better. And then at certain key pivotal moments, put that into overdrive to get leaders into certain positions or past certain things. And so I have the luck where I have communities in these spaces to put that anxiety into action. So if you're feeling that anxiety, look for ways you can help. We talked about ways you can testify today, but also consider going to a lobby day. So we made a video last year about lobby days. Sometimes an environmental coalition will put on an environmental lobby day. Sometimes groups will have like a small business lobby day. And these are days where people help train you and they help you talk to your elected officials and work on these areas and making them better. So take a look at that. And yeah, I think that's where we'll end it. Have a great month, start to your year. I hope you're doing well and taking care. We'll do this a day at a time. And hope for the best, I guess, right? Braden out.